Hi, this is ProACT Sam from ProACTPartnership.com. We help family and business living and working abroad, relocating overseas and investing offshore. And today we want to look at a post-Brexit scenario where what does an expat have to do to be working abroad in the EU. Once EU Brexit happens, then the four freedoms of EU citizenship will be lost to UK citizens that want to go and live and work in the EU. They'll also be lost to EU citizens that want to go and live and work in the UK. Now, I want to ignore the details of the immigration process at the moment, and what I want to look at in today's is what can you do to set up a business in one of the countries that would allow you then to live and work in that country. And I'm going to focus on the UK and Cyprus for comparative. Cyprus because it's an excellent location for expats and contractors and businesses who want an overseas base for their EU business. And the UK because it's a low-cost, vibrant, highly regulated, stable economy and a very vibrant place to set up and run a business from. So let's have a look at that. So when you get an expat that wants to live and work abroad, they can either go and work as an employee or they can go and set up their own business. Now, if you have a job in the country, then that is one step forward, and you can take a holiday to the UK or Cyprus to find that work. But generally, you have to have the work before you can move there. Once the four freedoms are removed, it may be that you even have to return to your home country to embark to the new country, depending upon visa and immigration arrangements, which are not the topic of this vlog. So let's have a look at what is involved in setting up a business in the UK. So if you want to go as self-employed or a company, either way is very low cost in the UK. There are a number of taxes associated with a company or self-employed. So with the self-employed, as soon as you start working, you've got a social insurance and national insurance liability for the work that you're doing in the country. You've got an income tax on income or profits. You've got a VAT liability for trading as a business, and potentially dividends from companies. Now in the UK, a newly self-employed person has lots of allowances and support and for businesses, so that social insurance isn't an immediate cash drain on the new business. The UK gives time for the new business to be established and trading profitably before heavy payments of social insurance are made, but it is important that you do register straight away in the UK. In Cyprus, the same is not true. Although you have similar social insurance rates for employees and employers and self-employed in the two countries, 22-25%, there are no allowances in Cyprus. So as soon as you start actively trading in Cyprus, you have to pay social insurance and for self-employed people it's even worse, because they assume a minimum level of income. So they assume that from day one of your trading that you're profitable, and this can become quite a negative cash expense for a new self-employed business in Cyprus. The VAT threshold in Cyprus is very low, like in many EU countries. In Cyprus it's set at 15,600 euros, which is about £12,000, whereas in the UK the VAT threshold is £85,000. That's around 100,000 euros. So a new small business or a sole contractor, somebody who's capable of earning 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 pounds, is not going to have the burden of VAT, and in fact will have a price competitive advantage against bigger companies for their new business, whether it's a sole trader or a company operating in the UK. So clearly an EU expat going to live and work in the UK without the expense and the burden of VAT, and with support on social insurance, not being a big cash drain on the company initially, they've got the first year to get out there and make some money and make some earnings and get the business running, while legitimately generating income to support their residence and lifestyle in the UK. Cyprus, if you trade through a company, the initial startup costs are even more stark. With the UK, it's a very low cost way to set up a company, but in Cyprus, a company is more expensive to set up, costing between €1,000 and €2,000 with stamp duties, legal fees and translations for an expat. But and there's a compulsory audit for all businesses or self-employed turning over €70,000. Audit in the UK is not applied to a business until turnover exceeds 5 million. So there's a big difference in cost difference in managing a lot of small businesses with turnovers under 5 million in the UK. So an expat, an EU expat looking to live and work in the UK, the actual cost of entry is quite good if they've got the business, the skill, the trade to create their own business as a self-employed contractor or as a UK company. The costs are pretty similar. You can actually argue that the UK cost is slightly lower. In Cyprus, the cost of setting up the business is considerably higher. However, once that business is set up, Cyprus becomes very competitive in terms of the tax benefits. So let's have a look at some of those. In the UK, there's 20% tax after around the first £12,000 of income, and then there's 40% tax over £46,000 of income. Now Cyprus, on the face of it, is a lower tax country, but you need to be aware of actually what that means. There's no tax up to the first €19,500, that's around £17,000. But then by £30,000, €35,000, you're paying 30% tax. Whereas in the UK, you can be earning the equivalent of €50,000 before you go on to 40% tax. So the 20% band in the UK is much higher than Cyprus before you're on to 35% tax almost 35% tax in Cyprus, income tax, before you get to the 40% mark in the UK. However, expats UK expats or expats who make their base in Cyprus have some other significant advantages. Although they don't get any allowances on the social insurance, they do get an income tax allowance on profits, up to 20% of their profits for the first 5 years. That can reduce the tax bill down quite considerably. In addition, if you're trading through a company, expats pay zero tax on dividends. So whereas there's restrictions with a UK company, if it's using loans or dividends before you get paid tax, in Cyprus an expat can have 0% tax on unlimited amount of dividends earned from a Cyprus or overseas company. What's more, if the expat in Cyprus is a self-employed working abroad, or if it's a Cyprus company that is earning its money abroad, it doesn't pay any tax on that overseas earnings or that overseas profit. Zero tax. Yes, you would declare it. Yes, it's fully authorised. It's not that it's exempt or on a remittance basis, it's that it's a zero tax. So it allows expats that are based in Cyprus and contract working in the UK, in Europe, in the Middle East, in Asia, around the world, in whatever industry, to pay little or no tax on their overseas earnings. So this is a big tax saving for expats, and what's more, you can do it as long as you've got a legitimate base in Cyprus. You can do it with 60 days residency in country. So you could be working for 10 months of the year in Asia, in the Middle East, and still have your 2 months holiday in Cyprus and still pay no tax on that income, even if you're earning $1 million abroad. So Cyprus is a very, very good tax base in that thing. So in summary, Cyprus is a bit more expensive to get started, but it's got big tax benefits later on as you start generating higher levels of income. Somebody on 50,000 as a self-employed contractor will be paying less tax in Cyprus than they would be in the UK. Somebody operating through a service company in the UK could pay less tax than that using loans and dividends. Using a UK company, then there are advantages in terms of the flexibility, but they can be quite comparative. But as a low cost base for the business, again, that works. Now, the other big final advantage for setting up a company is that it gives you a second tax entity. So we all as individuals have got a tax entity. If we set up a company, we've got a separate tax entity. So if an expat wants to live in one country but work in another, or even have a third home country, then having a corporation, a holding company, whether it's in Cyprus or Luxembourg or UK, allows them to have a tax residence in a second country and get the benefit of a personal tax advantage of living in Cyprus, for example, and the corporation tax advantage of working in the UK. If a company in the UK wants to have access to European countries, then it can set up a branch in the overseas company. So you could set up a branch of your company in Cyprus. It would become subject to Cyprus rules, but then that British company would have access to the EU markets cross borders for business and services that were created in that Cyprus branch. So this is another way around the Brexit issue for companies, is that they have their UK business and they have a branch in a foreign country. Now, there's a lot of hot air with EU Brexit for expats and for business, but around the world, many companies like Facebook and Google and Apple have European branches in the UK and in Europe, and this is how international companies work. So it just means that from a Europe base, those companies that want to trade and move about as expats and trade in different countries, the tariff and the borders and the barriers to entry may be there, but not if you set up a subsidiary company. And for an EU expat in the UK, this could be quite a low-cost way for them to maintain their business connections with the UK. So this is ProACT Sam. Go to our website at proactpartnership.com, living and working abroad. We've created a guide there on EU Brexit for expats and how it affects overseas property, business and pensions. Go along to our website at proactpartnership.com and download a copy, and look out for more blogs and vlogs and podcasts, and follow us from our website at proactpartnership.com, and we'll be in touch with you again soon. Thank you very much.